Welcome back, day 6 of the Advanced Healing course. And so far we've discussed the first ray, Divine Will, the second, Divine Love, the blue ray, the orange ray, Divine Art, and the third ray was of course the golden ray of creative intelligence. So we're now moving on to the fifth ray, which has a slightly more masculine feel or yang feel to the previous ray. But as I explained before, the yin and the yang are always interplaying with each other, so we don't need to get too caught up in the idea of it being polarized from a gender perspective, except that some rays are more active in nature and some are more receptive in nature. That's the difference. Okay, so we're now going to move on to ray number 5, the brilliant green ray known as Scientific Illuminism, divine science. And it's overlit now, as I explained in one of my previous lectures, now it's overlit by the great Chohan Sananda Kumara. And Sananda is one of the Kumaras of the Great White Brotherhood. It is generally accepted for those in occult or esoteric circles, was the master that overlit the work of the historic Christ, the Yeshua historic Christ, some 2,000 or so years ago. Okay, and as I mentioned recently, Sananda has moved to the fifth ray from the ray of devotion to enable the science, the unfolding scientific understandings of this new age or eon to reflect the true holographic nature and to transcend the linear thinking hallmarked of the Piscean age. The linear thinking of Newtonian physics, of reductionism, of compartmentalization, of hypothesis based on exactitude, to the more broad sweeps of the nonlinear perceptions of quantum physics, the idea of fields as opposed to specifics, the idea of continuous variation rather than discontinuous variation. So, a little bit about the ray number 5. This ray, the science ray, represents the ideas of absoluteness in the sense of the universe has laws. The universe which we exist in has laws which, if we are to operate effectively in it, we need to understand and recognize. Now, scientists have begun to understand that their previous perception of the laws, identified with the mechanics of the universe at the level of scale which we generally appreciate, in fact do not apply in different levels of scale. And as a result of that, quantum physics has been born, and quantum physics is the understanding that actually there are things beyond our limited senses, beyond space and time, and yet those things do have a reality of their own, yet it's not a reality that can be measured in the same way as we might measure the temperature of a bath or the distance between two bodies or other aspects which we are kind of used to in our normal everyday reality. Okay? Science is the understanding that the universe has form and order. It's very important to understand. The universe has form and order. Yes, it is true that within that form and within that order there are many non-linear aspects of continuous variation, and yet the universe has form and order and has a crystallizing nature within its breadth. So the manifest light of the infinite Godhead, when it cascades kaleidoscopically through the dimensions and light slows down, we enter states which dualistically through our mind we may feel are separate. But that is only part of the illusion, and the illusion occurs simply because of the subjective nature of our perception of things. And yet that subjective nature, under certain circumstances, can be very persuasive. And the belief systems and structures that have emerged from that subjective nature have created scientific thinking and thought which is actually short. It's actually short of the whole nature of reality. And fortunately, with this new age emerging and the green ray of science permeating scientific thinking in a much deeper way, there are many creative minds that are beginning to understand that what we thought we knew so much about was we actually know quite a lot less than we thought, and actually very little in many cases, even though we think we're very clever, particularly in the West. We're not as clever as we think. Another thing I want to also mention about the ray of science, which is very important, is it's linked to the idea of flow. And I talk about flow a lot. I teach the power of flow. And the flow is the subtle effluence of the universe permeating our reality as we experience it through the space-time continuum. So when we think about the goddess of flow, we think about the great goddess Rhea, or Cybele, the Roman counterpart of Rhea. And those goddesses represented the idea of cosmic discharge. So if you imagine a universe that's breathing, like lungs, in and out, in and out. So that's how the cycles of the universe are. The universe is in movement, and in that movement there are different things, different energies that come to the fore as the cycles unfold, whether those cycles are daily cycles through the hours of the day, through the minutes of the hour, or through the days of the seasons, or the seasons of the years, or the years through the greater cycles of the equinox of the gods, as we go into the great cycle through the galaxy of 26,000 years. All of these things represent an in-breath and an out-breath, for want of a better metaphor. It's a pretty good metaphor, actually. And our understanding of science is the recognition that we are in a moving universe. It's not a static universe. Our Euclidean geometry, the way we perceive information, perhaps through certain types of measurement, is simply a lens of perception. It's not an accurate, totally accurate lens. It's just a way of looking at things. We can create snapshots of reality and extrapolate from those snapshots various things that may be useful to help us, like how to fly an aeroplane, how to defy gravity, how to work with air turbulence, how to heat water, how to create computer-generated systems, and the rest of it. So they do have a relevance. However, within their parameters, there are aspects that are infinite and unknown. And that is a very, very important understanding of the scientific ray and the effects it has, that there are factors infinite and unknown. In the patriarchal age, human beings, particularly men, had this desire to control, to box, to compartmentalize our understandings of the universe. And because they were quite successful on some levels, it was like it had a hypnotic effect on the thinking of the day. William Blake balked at Sir Isaac Newton. And if you go to the Tate, you can see a brilliant picture that he painted of Newton. The picture is of Newton with a compass, with his focus being totally intended on a particular narrow set of parameters. And in that process, he missed the big picture. He missed the big picture. And William Blake, as an artist and a poet, was appalled by that. However, science doesn't have to be separate from art. It's a subject I've talked about for many decades. Science and art are actually two sides of the same coin. They're different ways to perceive and understand the brilliance of this expanding universe. Different ways to perceive information, and they don't have to be polarized. They're just different ways. The artist opens him or herself up to revelation, and the initiated scientist does a similar thing too. The story of Einstein, voted the greatest human being of the 20th century, was the story of a human being who was called dull at school because he didn't fit the tight remit of the academics. And yet he was a great intuitive, somebody who perceived beyond the boxing of that day. And when he saw the wobble of Mercury's orbit, he recognized that gravity did actually bend light. His intuition was demonstrated. And then he had to learn the mathematics, the dry mathematics of the academics of the day, to learn their language, to show them why it happened. But the most important thing is he intuitively understood, through the power of flow, through the activations of the green ray of science, the true relationships and proportionality between bodies and the effects that they had on each other, and the relativity and the nature. He could understand that and develop his thinking and appreciation through that, through an expanded consciousness. And I believe an expanded aspect of receiving the green ray of scientific Illuminism. He was illuminated. Eventually, some 20 or so years later, those scientists who'd been brought up on the programmed methodology of Newtonian physics had to come round and accept that in their midst was a great genius, somebody who actually was thinking beyond, a visionary of an incredible proportion. Science is linked to the idea of flow then. So when we call in the green ray of science, we're also activating the nature of the flow. The flow is the self-iterating, subtle changes in the universal continuum that occur on a minute by minute, second by second, day by day, hour by hour, month by month, season by season, year by year basis, decade by decade, century by century, as we move through the space-time continuum with different subtle influences occurring on us. And at this particular juncture, at this particular time in human evolution, okay, we're being bombarded with photonic particles and cosmic beams at an unprecedented level, and that is having a great effect on our light bodies, which we are responsive, empathic creatures by nature. And our light bodies and our DNA is getting activated in unusual ways. New children are coming onto the planet who are born with exceptional qualities. Genius is becoming the norm, or will become the norm, rather than just a rare exception as it was in the Piscean age. This is all due, in part, to the increased power of the scientific ray, the green ray of Illuminism, illuminating our pathways, illuminating our understandings of the universe and our relationship to it, illuminating the way we interact with others. And yet, with this comes birth pangs of a new age, because we're all of us in different ways are having to accept that some of the pre-conditioned ideas that we had are actually fall very short of satisfying results, that actually we've been misprogrammed in many, many ways. And yet science has a beautiful way of cutting through the bullshit, cutting through the nonsense, cutting through the programming and delivering the true nature of things. When we have the ability to look beyond the immediate types of ways we look at things and the experimentation and hypothesis that emerge from that experimentation, to look at things in a different kind of way, from a more feminine perspective, i.e. not all about reductionism, not all about 1 and 1 equals 2, not all about simple causation, but looking at the greater field of things, the greater subtle dynamics of the non-linear interactions of forces upon us and our relationship with it. So when we call in the scientific ray, now overlit by Sananda Kumara, we're also invoking the Christ-Krishnal crystalline consciousness. And the idea of Christ consciousness, of crystalline consciousness, is that all of us have the ability to be perfected mirrors of the infinite, and have the ability to receive all the rays of influence: will, love, creativity, art, science, devotion, and alchemy. And furthermore, with Sananda now overlighting this 5th ray of scientific Illuminism, we now are in a position, okay, where we can perceive information from a more holographic perspective. We can perceive information in a way that connects all of us and connects the information in a field of sentience. We can move beyond the limited, and this is very, very important, because what's happened in the masculine age is that things like astronomy and astrology have become separate. Astrology and astronomy in Babylonian times were part of the same thing, and yet we've now moved to a place where the universe is perceived through one set of apparatus, and we call it astronomy, measurement, and then we look at it intuitively, and it's a separate one. This new age or aeon, we will see astronomy and astrology getting back together again. We will see science and art integrating again. This new age is about integration. The Christ consciousness, the second coming, is the idea that all aspects of the divine can be reunited into a harmonic continuum. Harmony is the key. the idea of a continuum, of everything being connected. This is the nature of unity consciousness. This is the nature of the scientific ray of Illuminism that opens us up to the true nature of the information. Now, if you think about religious perspectives and ideals that people have had through the ages, they were limited in many regards. Yes, people had intuitive ideas, but many of the ideas became limited to the levels of perception that were currently available to those recipients. And yet we still had people like the Amazonian women finding ways to grow crops and circulate the crops without slash and burn techniques that would drain the land of its nutrients. There was the feminine elements that intuitively were able to tune into the systems and find solutions without having advanced instruments of measurement. So we have a paradox here. On one level, we have instruments that are more exact and powerful than at any time in human history. On another level, we have results that do not match that, and we have a planet which we are killing and destroying and maiming in many respects. I, however, remain fully optimistic as Sananda has moved to overlight the green ray of scientific Illuminism, because I believe that utilizing this ray will enable us to creatively find solutions to the practical problems that we have in terms of the use of the energy for the planet, the way we operate with each other, the way we transport each other, the growing of food, so there's enough food to eat for everybody, the quality of the food that we have, and moving away from a lot of the negative technologies of biotech, where we've been messing up the ecosystems, messing up the organic systems which our bodies are used to, that have occurred over thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of years of evolution for a quick fix or for a quick buck. Those kind of things we are going to see are going to be disappearing in this new aeon. And the more we use the green ray of pure science, the ray of Illuminism, the faster we will find solutions as a collective or individually to these problems, to these issues. By living in the flow, what we're doing is we're saying we want to harmonize with the true unfolding nature of the universe. To be in harmony with the environment means to be in harmony with the planets, to be in harmony with the sun, to be in harmony with the moon, to be in harmony with the cycles of the earth, to be in harmony with ourselves and the way we interact, to be in harmony and good relations with our environment. Most people on the planet aren't in harmony, or at least they're only in partial harmony. There is no judgment of these people. It's because they're not fully aligned to the green ray of science, the true nature of the energetic interactions of the universal continuum affecting our light bodies. Working with the ray will help us get back into the flow. Utilizing the moon and working with the moon is one of the best ways to reconnect us emotionally to the subtle changes that the universe has. Working with the sun helps us align ourselves mentally. Okay? Working with the stars helps us align our whole field connectively to the true nature. That doesn't mean to say we have to be an astrologer or an astronomer. It does mean that if we live and consciously work with the subtle bodies, with the seasons, transcending the Gregorian calendar of Roman times, we can move to a place of peace with our environment, peace with the way we operate, peace with the food we eat, peace with the people that we interact with. And when we live in flow, when we are aligned to the true nature of the subtle influences of the universe, when we consciously move to a place of alignment and congruence with our environment in nature, I can assure you, my friends, of one thing: dis-ease disappears. Dis-ease disappears. Harmony emerges, and we can step outside of separation, of suffering, and of the entropy that is associated with energy fields that leak. We leak because we're disassociated. We leak because we're attached to geocentric things. We leak because we are falsely programmed. We leak because of the toxins in the environment, in our thinking, in the food, on the TV. All these things drain our energies in different ways. If we can transcend that, we don't have to be a monk, but if we can work with ways that we don't leak, that we move beyond attachments to people, places, outcomes and things, we can move to a place of an absolute harmonic with the true source of the energy of the planet, which is the infinite chi of the universe, the 0 point, which occurs pantheistically through all nature, okay? And to do this more effectively, I have found I call in and work with Sananda Kumara, who overlights the fifth ray of science, of Illuminism, of flow. And that's what I encourage all of us to do. It's a wonderful thing when we learn to connect with the crystallizing nature of the light as it cascades kaleidoscopically through the dimensions. And our lives will be beauteous mirrors reflecting that. When we step outside of our comfort zones and reject those things that aren't working. If things don't feel right, don't do them. I encourage people to live like that. If you want to be in flow, call in Sananda Kumara every day and live a holographic life connected to all things. Listen to your body. Listen to the cycles of the moon. Listen to the cycles of nature. Listen and watch and act and live consciously in alignment with the fifth ray of scientific Illuminism, and you will be happy and you will be aligned, and the earth will clean itself up. That is my vision, and that should, I hope, be everyone's vision over time as the green ray of science permeates more effectively into the Earth's astral ambience. Any questions, anybody? Good. Any questions, Lucinda?
No, I'm finished.
Good, thank you. Everybody, that's the end, and I hope you found it useful to hear about the scientific ray of Illuminism. Just call it in, and you'll be aligned to the flow. Take care.